morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a look at some important changes to tournament rules which are happening in the Pokemon trading card game. Now I need to give a massive shout out to the lovely Matthew Verive Immunity over on Twitter, and you know we're a fan of him. He's very much a friend of the channel. We say nice things about him regularly, and he very much deserves it, because there is no longer a summary at the end of these tournament documents. So Matthew's gone and done it for us. This was initially hosted over on PokeGym, so shout out to Matthew and to PokeGym for being awesome. And if you're not following Matthew on Twitter, might I suggest you do so? Now there are a bunch of changes. Some are a little bit bigger, some are a little bit smaller. Speaking of smaller changes, in the section that talks about additional legal languages for Premier events by country, it no longer refers to Japan, Korea, Thailand, or Indonesia. Hang on a second, ladies and gentlemen. What's happened? They're not affected by this document. This document doesn't refer to them. Now, for those of you that may be unaware, the Pokemon Company International is actually a subsidiary of the Pokemon Company that deals with all things Pokemon outside of Asia, or outside of Japan, largely. It gets kind of complicated. Now, recently, it actually changed so that Thailand and Indonesia, their organised play programs, were not covered by the Pokemon Company International. They've been taken over by somebody else. So, yes, this is a fairly big change in the document, but it actually doesn't matter even a little bit, because it doesn't actually change anything. It's just a document saying, yeah, it doesn't actually count. Now, reprinted cards in the unlimited format. Now, the unlimited format is where you can play any cards whatsoever outside of ones that may have been banned, etc. Remember, up until about, I think it was the last revision, they never really acknowledged the unlimited format in this document. So the fact that they do is kind of awesome. What they've said is, as there is no restriction on the number of expansions legal for play in the unlimited format, players will occasionally come across trainer cards from older expansions that have the same name as newer cards but completely different effects. Players may still include those older versions of the card in their decks, provided that the wording of the most recent version is used, wherever that card is concerned. So, for instance, if we take Quick Ball as an example, Quick Ball as a card, actually, when it was initially printed back in Mysterious Treasures, was a completely different card to what it is nowadays. Nowadays, it is discard a card from your hand and search your deck for any basic and put it in your hand. Back in Mysterious Treasures, it was reveal cards from your deck until you reveal a Pokemon and put it into your hand, like a Judge Ball at the beginning of a game. Well, you can play Quick Ball in Unlimited as long as you got a reference to the more recent one. Now, for anyone that's wondering, and this is a good chance to chuck this in there as a nice little thing, the reason why we can actually play Quick Ball, the old version, in standard tournaments is it's because it received an official errata. An official errata is where the Pokemon Company actually come out and say, read the card like this. The rule is, if it's had an official errata, all the wording is essentially the same, functionally the same, you can use the old version, otherwise you can't. Whereas in Unlimited, you can just use old trainer cards just so long as you've got a reference to the more recent version. Now, in terms of deck legality, there was a change made to the wording to make things a little bit clearer, but it is quite important. So, both the deck list and the deck contain more or less than 60 cards, is now the deck list and or deck do not contain 60 cards. You see, the old wording basically said the deck and the deck list. This one says the deck list and or the deck. So there's going to be no more arguments of, oh yeah, but my deck is fine. Nope. And both the deck list and the deck contain 5 copies of double colourless energy, violating the 4-card limit rule, has changed to, in a standard format tournament, the deck list and or the deck contain 5 copies of double colourless energy. This is just an example, it could refer to any card. So again, it's referring to the deck list and or deck rather than the deck list and the deck to remove any confusion. So basically, get your deck list right. To be clear, you were still going to have a penalty before if your deck was right but your deck list was wrong. But now it's nice and clear that they both have to reflect the same thing. Now, there is actually a new section, and this is a very, very important new section, and that is to do with pace of play. Now, this is entirely new, so we are going to go through this in a little more detail, purely because this is new and it is extremely relevant because it goes to playing too slowly. Now, there are both minor, which means you get a warning, and severe, which is a double prize card. Remember, they got away with single prize card penalties. Here's what it says. Players should take care to play in a manner that keeps the game pace lively, regardless of the complexity of the situation. That's a very important phrase, because how many times have you heard somebody argue, oh no, I'm taking ages, but this is a really big turn? Pace of play infractions occur when a player's actions, or lack thereof, affect the game pace to an extent that puts their opponent at a disadvantage. In addition to the recommended penalty, the judge may issue a time extension to offset this advantage. And then it says to refer to guidelines to determine what constitutes a reasonable length of time to complete a game action. Let's take a look, shall we? So it does actually have a little bit of a look. There is actually a genuine table there. Shuffling a game and setting up, 2 minutes. Shuffling and deck search mid-game, 15 seconds. Performing the actions of a card or attack, 15 seconds. Considering the game position before playing a card, 10 seconds. Starting after an opponent's end of turn announcement, 5 seconds. Although it does say these are guidelines only and should be considered within the context of normal gameplay. Players attempting to compartmentalize their turn in order to consistently use every second of the time allowed will be subject to penalties associated with stalling. Yep. That is not a hard and fast rule. Let's be clear. But it does give you a nice little example there of the kind of speed we're looking for, shall we say. So, minor pace of play. What would be minor and severe? Because we know there are different penalties. A minor pace of play infraction would be repeatedly searching the deck, hand, or discard pile while executing a card effect. We've all seen the opponent that searches our discard pile 4 times in a row. No point. Counting or searching your or your opponent's deck or discard pile more than once in a short time period. Remember, taking an unreasonable length of time to decide where to attach an energy card. Rushing your opponent's attack step by putting damage on your Pokemon before your opponent announces which attack they are using. Now, this one is really easy to do accidentally when it's late in the game. You know what your opponent's doing. They've just attached a third energy. You know what attack they're going to use. There's only one attack they're going to use. You still have to wait for them to announce the attack. Otherwise, you're rushing them and you're going to get a warning. Severe pace of play may be assessed when there is a sustained or repeated ill effect on the pace of one or more subsequent games. So this could actually happen throughout the tournament rather than just in one game. And this would be things like habitual slowness in choosing targets for receiving or resolving effects and or damage, and poor pace of play that does not improve following a prior penalty, i.e. if you slow playing get given a warning, if you keep going it may well end up being escalated. Now, there are a couple of changes that were made to the standards of conduct. Now, this is a separate document, but this is basically being a nice boy. And what we see here is a fairly big change in the introduction. These standards apply regardless of the form or way a user participates in play Pokemon. For example, wherever an online platform is utilized, these standards also apply to all virtual interactions with fellow participants. Now, we know that we have had the Players' Cup, a proper, organized, sanctioned online tournament, which has been going while we've all been stuck at home over the past month. It is overwhelmingly likely that this is the change that's been made. So that person that when I beat them and knocked them out of the Players' Cup replied, trash deck, that is very much against the code of conduct, and that could affect them in real tournaments as well as just online. Whoopsie. Now, there were some slight changes made to the community conduct here. Pokemon Organized Play does not and will not itself monitor any program members' activity on or in any platform or environment outside any Play Pokemon event setting, was changed to Pokemon Organized Play does not and will not actively monitor any program manager's activity on or in any platform or environment outside any Play Pokemon event setting. I.e., it used to be that they would only really act on a complaint. We're not monitoring, but if you let us know. Whereas now they're not actively monitoring. Monitoring? That'll do. But you never know. Might be. Now, there were changes to the harassment and bullying section. Although I have no time whatsoever for anyone that breaks these rules, it's not okay. Now, it used to be that the first example read, use of language that discriminates based on attributes such as race, religion, ethnic origin, national origin, gender, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or economic means. Now it reads, use of language, messages, symbols, images, illustrations, or links that discriminate based on attributes such as. I.e., they're moving away from just things that you say, and it would also count if you dropped a link or a picture or things of that nature. Just makes things a little bit clearer. Although, to be clear, even before, I think if you'd have gone and dropped some inappropriate picture, it definitely would have been acted on. Now, there is another example as well. Use of any language, symbols, or images that would otherwise violate the Play Pokemon equality, equity, diversity, and inclusivity policy. And they added an example, threats or images of violence, harm, or retaliation. So basically they're just shoring up the harassment and bullying policy, and I'm all in favour of this. Now, there were also a couple of changes made to the League Handbook, but these are very, very small and won't apply to the vast majority of you. In the Store Finder section, they added the Store Finder section. It's to do with the Store Finder tool and editing retail details, etc. It's not going to be relevant for the vast majority of you. And they did add a section on staff stamped promo cards, which we all know are awesome. And it just clarified that staff promos exist for pre-releases and are shipped independently of the pre-release kits. There we go. Like I say, for the vast majority of you, unless you run a store, that might not be terribly relevant. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Some of these are quite small, but certainly things like the harassment and bullying and the pace of play are things that you absolutely need to make sure that you're up on. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you think about any of these. I want to know if you got any more questions, etc. So let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.